fans, and welcome to Deshler Free-Mo 2025. Come along for an engineer's eye view as we navigate the full length of the layout. This Free-Mo layout existed from April 24th to 27th of 2025 in Deshler, Nebraska. A great big thank you goes out to Spring Creek Model Trains for generously providing the venue for us to set up and run trains for 3 whole days. The layout this year was a large loop-to-loop style layout featuring a single-track main line with 9 passing sidings, a secondary main to a third loop, 3 yards, and 4 stub-end branch lines. We'll start from Keith Yard and head to the furthest point on the main at Donny's Loop, and then run it all the way or back around to 29th Street Loop at the far end. After that, we'll turn around and head down the secondary main to Dow Loop, and then finish our run on the Murdoch branch. There will be audio commentary along the way. If you would rather just enjoy the views without me yapping at you the whole time, there is a commentary-free version linked in the description. Here we go. Keith Yard comes to us courtesy of Brett Gorney from Oklahoma, and I love Keith Yard because it's very commonly seen at these setups across the southern United States, around the Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska kind of region whenever Brett shows up. And we've got it's a really beautiful little small yard, gives you 4 tracks of storage space, an arrival and departure track, and really just, I think the highlight of this module for me is the fact that it has extremely smooth and well put together track work. That's something that is sometimes a little bit lacking on some modules, and having never had a derailment in Keith Yard, I think that does say a lot. It's also not built to Free-Mo standards. Technically, it belonged to a different modular club back in the day, and so it requires an adapter at one end to bring it out to the Free-Mo standard and allow it to incorporate with other modules. Now we'll go into ARC 2 and ARC 1. This is from Doug Cron out of Arkansas. These are meant to evoke memories of any places along a main line out in the natural state. It features a small town scene and also a deep cut that was also notably just a little too low for our GoPro camera to reach through on this setup. Now here we're at St. Paul Y, coming off of the Keith Yard branch and entering into the main. We'll be taking this Y onward into Conway. Conway is another one of Doug Cron's module sets, and it is a small passing track that is representative of downtown Conway, Arkansas. This module set is set sometime before the end of the steam transition, back whenever we still had passenger service on most lines, and also it does provide a passenger stop for those running passenger trains, a short, around 10-foot long siding, and also a house track. Going a little bit more modern to West Dodge City, this is from Matt Albert, representing the real-life location on the west side of Dodge City, Kansas, where the BNSF La Junta sub crosses under the US 400 bypass alongside US 50. A pretty faithful representation of what the scene looks like. Small curve here that will take us onward into BEM Stone. This one comes to us from Catherine Erickson out of Nebraska. And it's a small aggregate industry alongside the main with a lot of really nice scenery work done as well. But I know sometimes I've seen a few people put some 3-bay grain hoppers into that siding by mistake, but most of the time we do tend to get it right. Now we're at Donny's Loop. This is the far end of our main line run for today, with a single track entrance that opens out into 3 tracks, one main down. I don't think we ever defined which track on this module was the main through route, but anyway, as long as you have one open, then you're able to pass trains, maybe have a parking spot for someone. If you have to take a bathroom break sometimes, or step away from the layout for any reason, then finding a spot to park a train and let it sit for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour or so, it is sometimes a little bit tough to get done. So this is a really nice spot, and when we have these runaround loops, we often have a little bit of extra trackage that we can use for more long-term parking spots. Donny's Loop was built back in 2024 and no longer belongs to Donny Berg. This one is now owned by Nick Smith out of Kansas City, and there's been a significant amount of scenery work done to it since the time of this recording, and hopefully we'll get a video of that coming up sometime in the future. Heading back now out onto the main, we'll be going back through BEM Stone, Dodge City, and Conway. And just want to take this moment to talk about Free-Mo as a setup. Maybe you're watching along, some of our viewers might not know exactly what Free-Mo is. And Free-Mo is a modular railroading standard that seeks to more closely emulate the real-life appearance and operations of railroads, focusing more on single-track mainline operations, switching industries, and just operating more like a real railroad does. Free-Mo modules are built to a standard that specifies the end plates of the modules must be 2 feet wide, 6 inches deep, with the main track running down the center for single track, and for double track modules, they're about 2 inches wider, with the middle of the module between the two mains. This allows the tracks to meet up consistently at the ends of the modules, and then we can lash them all together and form a layout and to custom fit to any space that we have available to us. A Free-Mo module can typically be between 2 and 4 feet long, but also sometimes a little bit longer. Just depends on what you feel comfortable transporting based off of your weight and the length of dimensions and what your transport capabilities are. Now we're coming around St. Paul Y once again. St. Paul Y is supposed to represent a junction that has had one of the through routes cut off and abandoned, while the diamond has been removed and the other route has been changed over into a Y track setup. So this now takes us, we're taking this next left-hand turn, will take us back out onto the main and immediately into Geneva siding. This module set is called Yoda by Kieran Luscombe, and this one is still, as of yet, mostly unfinished. Not much scenery work done, but there's a lot of switching opportunities on these tracks, lots of industry tracks off on the left-hand side. Gives you that 2-to-1 to take you from single track to double track main, and now we're getting over towards Photographer's Curve. This is another module coming out from Minnesota. I don't know who exactly owns this one, and it is still under construction, but it's going to be a really nice, wide, sweeping curve that'll give great photographic opportunities once some scenery has been put on it. Looking forward to seeing how that one comes out once it's all been done. Onward into Litchfield. This is a short 2-foot module from Catherine Erickson with a small crossover in the middle and signals. You may notice that there's a lot of signals on this layout that are not lit. On this setup, we did not actually wind up setting up the signaling system, but we do have the capability to do so. More modules these days seem to have it than those that don't. And now to Geneva. This is the namesake of our siding along the track plan, and also a very large set of modules that gives multiple pass tracks. In fact, it opens up into a quadruple track setup, so we have a passing siding or a parking spot on either side of the main line. And this is from Father Harlan Waskowiak out of Nebraska. A really useful module to have around, with a lot of space to put trains, and you can get meets going in either direction. There's a lot of utility involved in this module, and also a few switching opportunities. And now, once we get to the far end of Geneva siding, we will be coming through the milepost 86 2-to-1 back down to single track main, and it heads on up into anywhere I-64. A nice single track straight through module from Nick Smith out of Kansas City. This is the first time I'd seen this one at a Free-Mo setup, and I gotta say, it really was kind of breathtaking to see this module with all the scenery work done, the underpasses. All of it was really well done. Very nice scenery work from Nick. Another one from Father Harlan. This is St. Michael, another 2-to-1 to open us back up into another siding. Meeting another train here, the train courtesy of Rob Petty. This is door siding. The doorway module is also a new addition to this setup this year, and it's custom built for the venue here in Deshler, Nebraska by Spring Creek Model Trains. It's a little narrower than a typical Free-Mo module and allows the layout to go through this doorway with a little bit more room for people to pass by, a little bit more aisle space over on the left-hand side. And it also is the Keystone module, which is the module that goes into the setup first, and all other modules are made to conform to exactly how that one is set up. Now we're on to Water's Edge from Daryl Klatsky out of Kansas. Beautiful module, a lot of nice scenery work and some nice details on the shrubbery on the sides. Augusta is another one of the showpiece modules. This one's from Donny out of Nebraska, originally built by Rob Petty. It's got a siding on it, also an industrial lead, and a really well done, extremely detailed oil refinery scene with several switching opportunities along it. A nice peninsula setup where the spurs actually extend out onto short stub end tables to give more depth and more scenery space. It's a really fantastic module and also has won several awards from the train shows that it has been set up at previously. This next module is also from Rob Petty, and this is his project that he moved on to after completing Augusta. This is Wichita Union Terminal. This is meant to represent the heyday of passenger operations in Wichita, Kansas, before all the tracks that led into the station terminal were ripped out. Nowadays, there's almost none of this that still exists, but it's a very faithful representation of what the scene looked like, not just along track level, but also down below the buildings, the terminal building that we don't actually have on video, and in this specific video is extremely well done, extremely detailed, and very accurate to the actual prototype building. The station platforms are really well rendered, and just overall it's a very fantastic setup. Also very long. It's about 20 to I believe 25 feet long. Rob, if you're watching, then send me a correction on the actual length of Wichita Union Terminal. It's another module that gives us another passing siding and also plenty of yard space for passenger operations. This one, this is definitely one of the beating hearts of any Free-Mo setup that it's in, and for passenger folks, then it is absolutely one of the key modules along this route. We're going to be taking a little bit slower of a pace as we come up to another meet. This is another little window into the world of Free-Mo that kind of shows you that even though we may be focused on prototype operations, we aren't really too specific on exactly what time frame it's supposed to be in. I know a lot of folks, myself included, tend to model towards the modern day, but a lot of folks also would be modeling older stuff. This is an eclectic mix of different eras of trains running side by side. I know some folks may not like that, but others, I think it's kind of cool myself to just see all the different timelines and time frames that get incorporated into a meet. It's a nice mishmash of all kinds of different things. And also with any Free-Mo setup, there's always going to be a few little problems that pop up. Most of the first day of running with any Free-Mo setup usually is spent ironing out the kinks and figuring out all the little problems that come from setting up these modules that may have not been set up in the specific configuration before. Like you see those that derailment that happened just there. That one, goes to show that the module joints are actually one of the places that you should probably pay the most attention to whenever you're constructing a module, because you got to get that exactly right. Otherwise, you're going to have alignment issues, and that can often find its way into derailments when a car that might not track it the best runs over it. You often will find you'll find the equipment that doesn't behave the nicest whenever you're at a Free-Mo setup. Now we're getting out of the Wichita siding and onto one of the longer stretches of single track along the route. This is going to take us into Birdsong Peanuts, a small industry siding with a couple of industry tracks that form an X configuration. You can switch this one from either direction. Usually takes boxcars. Into Wyoda Bend, a really nice module with a lot of good scenery work on it. This one's from Donny out of Nebraska, and some nice little wooden bridge that flies over the track. We head immediately into another one of Donny's modules. This is Shady Bend, featuring a few more tall trees along the right-of-way. It gives us a little shade along the right-of-way. On to Cottonwood Shoals. This is one of my modules alongside my brother. This one was originally built by a man named John Locke, who has since passed on, and this module has changed hands a couple of times. We bought it off of Doug Cron from Arkansas, and it's really fantastic scene of a through-truss bridge over a pretty deep little river valley. A lot of scenery work that I'd like to get done on that, and it's always a work in progress. Another module for me and my brother James. This is Maney Farms, a small, short, 4-foot-long section of just open farmland and open track like that. It's always good to have to make the run a little bit longer. Not every single module has to be a switching destination. Here's Garrett's Trucking from Ryan Harris, a couple of 45-degree curves on the single-track modules, and that takes us through into Shoal Junction, back to another siding. And Shoal Junction is a really crucial point along the railroad because it's a three-way junction that features a 90-degree at-grade crossing between a single-track and double-track main, but also a third route that splits off from the double-track main and goes on off to the right-hand side. It's not visible through that coal train that's parked there, but Shoal Junction is usually one of the crucial points along the railroad for the design factor and how the layout's actually going to come together. Shoal is often an early consideration in the design of the layout. Going through a couple of 45-degree double-track curves here from James Weiner. These are in various states of finish degree, but getting some scenery done along those, looks like. And heading into Davenport, this one's from Aaron Levering, representing Davenport, Nebraska. There's a industry lead off to the side that we'll get a better look at when we come back around on our way over towards the secondary main. A series of 4 45-degree double-track modules coming from Foster Brennan out of Texas. These are really highlighting the importance of building curves. I know a lot of folks, myself included, might start off with a more simple, straight-through module, but if you feel like you're up to the task, building a curved module right out of the gate is going to get you into a lot more Free-Mo setups, because we're always in high demand to have curved modules. But sometimes we often don't have enough curved tracks to actually help us fit the space fully. So they're really helpful to have, and you'll almost never be sitting out if you do have a curved track module in your set. Going into Darius Bell's station with a signal, a couple of interesting things. A nice Santa Fe style passenger depot off on the left and a grain industry on the right. This also comes down to a 2-to-1 with signals on the far end. Again, not lit because we don't have the signaling system set up and operational for this setup. We're going to have to come to a stop here to meet a couple of oncoming trains. Another thing that I really do like about Free-Mo is the fact that you aren't able to just set a train on and just let it go and forget about it. You have to be operating a lot more like a real-world train crew, that you have to be in charge of your train and monitoring where you're headed, the switches that you're about to head through, where people are on the layout in front of you. Sometimes we are actually able to get dispatcher ops going whenever we have a really busy time on the layout with a lot of people running. We've actually had someone take up a dispatcher desk and set up everybody up with 2-way radios, communicating track authority, track warrants, that kind of thing. Really pretty fun from an operational standpoint, and always a challenge because the layout, of course, is different every time. So you have to figure out how to best operate the layout kind of on the fly. And it's a little bit more of an involved way of approaching model railroads. It makes it feel a little bit more like the real thing, and it feels a little bit more engaging, if you ask me anyway. But I know that's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people like to just set a train on and let it go, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no wrong way to approach this hobby, just as long as you're having fun and doing what you want to do with the hobby in general. Another train coming at us with some Union Pacific power on the head end. A couple of those in a row kind of makes it feel a little bit more thematically consistent.
there's a lot of cool stuff up there. Intermountain scale trains.
I bought a box that was like 500 8-ton scale cars. And the basic was hard shell cars, but the great to put inside the seat, then you see that's all you see anyway when you're looking at the silhouette.
Now we're going to finally get back out onto the main after we've had to wait our turn to head onto this last stretch of single track, getting out of Darius's modules and onward into a couple of curbs that are called the beer curbs. These are also pretty commonly seen. They tend to travel quite a bit from the South Kansas Free-Mo group. They'll make guest appearances all throughout the region, and they are very useful 45-degree single track modules, or at least that was what they were supposed to be. So the story is that with these modules, they were supposed to be 45-degree curves, but they actually wound up coming out more like between 41 and 43 degrees when they were finally all built and constructed. So they're just a little bit off. It kind of makes you think maybe the guy running the miter saw might have had a few too many beers on that day. So therein lies the name.
Someone's got to do the morning shift. Might as well be me, I guess.
Here's Big Cut from Kieran Luscombe, another pretty dramatic little stretch of railroad, and I appreciate the fact that this cut has has more of the V shape that you would see more in the real world, as opposed to more of a straight up and down stone-walled 90-degree cut that is pretty tempting to make, and I've seen a lot of folks do. Here's Keg Creek coming to us from Donny Berg out of Nebraska, and then we're getting into Boston Mountain. This one's unfinished, and I believe this was the first show that this module set ever came to, but boy howdy, I tell you what, once this one does get some more complete scenery put on it, it is going to be an extremely impressive and really photogenic spot to get the camera out and set up for your train to go by. Just really looking forward to seeing how this one progresses, coming to us from Jared Russell out of the Kansas City Free-Mo group. And now we're getting into T&E Industrial from Donny Berg from Nebraska. There's a diverging route off to the right that goes on to another one of our short dead-end branch modules, and also a couple of small industry spurs available to switch. There's really quite a bit going on in that small space along that module. There's a couple of fillers here. These were custom built and constructed just to help us fit the space a little bit, so they're pretty barren, and Donny Berg just threw those together in a couple of hours. And sometimes that's the way you have to do it if you want to fit your layout into the space available. Sometimes things don't quite line up the way you planned. Now we're at 29th Street Loop. This is, I think, in my opinion, this is one of the most impressive modules along the entire route, just because of how expansive and massive it is. This is a very large loop of track. I estimate, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but I know it's at least 50 feet of main line through track with a couple of passing sidings. This is another focal point of the layout because it also features a pretty good-sized little switching yard on the far side, and also a grain elevator for switching operations. So there's always a lot to do on this module set. A lot of space for trains to come in and park when they need to. Passing sidings, just there's a lot to do along this module. I believe it was originally constructed back in the early 2010s or late 2000s by the South Kansas Free-Mo group, and it's seen some better days. There's a little bit of repair work that needs to be done. I know Jeff Zucker, who is the current owner of this module, is doing a lot of work to get it back up to more reliable operating condition, and really am looking forward to seeing how this one also continues to progress, because it's fantastic to have in any setup. It's extremely useful just to have the extra space. It's really sprawling and just open, and gives you gives you plenty of operational capability whenever it's a part of a setup.
We need to know what to do, so we can all move on. And I want to remain friends. I don't want to lose you as a friend over a bunch of things. It's just not what I want. It's one of those that I really don't need to maybe have to we can talk about that, but it's like Brenda said, I think that I think one of the things progress
As we're following one grain train coming out of the siding ahead of us, we're going to have to wait for a couple of more oncoming trains that'll be meeting us at this loop. It's all this track, this massive complex of sidings and spurs going everywhere. It all comes down to a single track throat at the far end, and that's, again, gives you that operational headache of trying to get trains around each other. With that long stretch of single track in front of us, we do have to wait for at least a couple of movements to come our way before we can get back underway.
Is that some of the new Thai cars? Cool. Yeah, they're pretty sweet looking. That's probably right there. Weathering job. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Weathering job. I like that.
And
Because you had the camera out.
Of course. Yeah, the blooper reel is going to be longer than the good reel. Track issue here, track issue there, like whatever. I just cannot get a full run by video. I guess, but. Yep, I can slip in. Don't have a big long train to worry about. Yeah, is that Brett, are you on the left hand? Okay, cool. I'm gonna come on up. Hold it, Shoal.
Back onto shoal siding now, and this was probably the biggest operational headache that we had along the entire layout, was the shoal siding directionality issue. At Shoal Junction, there was no crossover whenever you come off of the connector from the single track route to the double track route. There was no crossover to take you between either of the double mains, so you had to run the full length of shoal siding down to the single track, and for folks coming in or going out, that required a pretty long stretch of bi-directional running on this single left-hand track that we're currently running on. So that caused a lot of issues. You had to coordinate pretty far in advance with anybody else who might have been running on the Grand Island branch, or with anybody who was coming through on this double track section, or maybe coming into or going out of the Grand Island yard where we're headed. There was a lot of operational headache here, and it all would have been solved by just one double track crossover module that could have been right in about here. So that goes to show you that every Free-Mo setup is a little bit different, and sometimes things can get overlooked in the design phase, and it leads to unforeseen issues during the operations. But again, it leads to challenges, and challenges make things a little bit more interesting, if you ask me. Going through Shoal Junction, there's another look at that secondary route that diverges off the double track main. That one, in this case, went down into a transload facility called Fairfax. And we're heading on to the secondary main line through Shoal Junction back out onto our single track main. This will take us down to Grand Island Yard and eventually Dow Loop. A couple of nice little switching opportunities in here for some metal distributors and another industry where you can back cars into the building. Just a really nice setup on Shoal Junction. That's always a lot of fun, a lot of stuff to do on there. A duck under module. This is a utility module. It's not technically built to Free-Mo standards, but it fits in with it's able to be used with Free-Mo, and also it gives you a little bit of extra clearance on the underside for folks to duck underneath the layout and get back and forth in between, because there is a lot of that has to happen whenever you're running around with your train. Sometimes you'll wind up on the wrong side of the layout from where you actually need to be. Couple more beer curves from the South Kansas group, and now into Arbuckle from Kirk Conrath out of Oklahoma City. This is Mere Creek. This is another newer module from Kieran Luscombe. It's another one that features a little bit of verticality to the terrain. Really, I do appreciate that off to the right-hand side. Good for photography. Now we're into Grand Island Yard, and Grand Island is another one of the operational centerpieces of the area. This is pretty much the staging portion of the layout, where most of the trains that are operating would be set up or taken off the layout. This is one of the main terminals for the layout. We've got 4 tracks on either side. Sometimes it's partially used for operations, with folks leaving their stuff up on the layout for other folks to take around and switch out at various industries or all around the layout. And also the outside tracks are usually where trains are getting set up and prepared to head out onto the main line.
You'll have to run a branch on the... Yeah, I'm trying to head down the branch. No, it switches to go around the main line.
Getting through Grand Island Yard now and back onto single track running. This is Bike Path, featuring a bit of a controversial scene that you see that there's a person lying on the track that has been hit by a passing train. There's a scene with some first responders coming in to investigate. The jury's still out. I know that opinions do tend to vary on that scene in general. We'll just kind of leave it at that. Dow Junction Loop. This is probably another one of the most commonly seen modules in the region, at least in my opinion, because the South Kansas Free-Mo group is usually pretty egalitarian about putting their modules out and letting other groups take temporary use of them for other setups around the region. Dow Junction is a 3-track loop that also gives you another passing siding and a parking spot for maybe a longer term step away from the layout. really useful track, and also this module is, in my opinion, it's pretty bulletproof. Over the years, I know I've seen this at so many setups over time, and almost always seems to run like a top with no big problems. So always love to see Dow Junction, and hopefully we'll continue to see it for a long time to come.
Yeah, they do.
Now we're coming back around out of Dow, and we're going to head back down through Grand Island and then back out onto the Murdoch branch before we finish things up.
Once I get this done, I'm just going down the branch. As long as it's a quick run to the store, I don't want to spend too much time there. I got to start running some locals to pick up my cars that got distributed.
Now coming back into Shoal Junction, heading straight through on the 90-degree single track to the double track main. This will take us onto the Murdoch branch, and we start off with single fill. That's a small 2-foot-long filler from Kurt Conrath that'll take us into Papillion. This is from Bruce Hoberger. It's a nice long passing siding. In fact, usually this module is about 20 feet long, but it's been cut down to 10 feet for this setup. There's usually 2 middle sections that are not included in this setup due to space restrictions, but it's got a cold storage facility, a small petroleum industry off to the left-hand side, and really awesome module set from Bruce. That's probably the only compliment you'll ever hear me giving Bruce, though, so Bruce, you better put that one in your pocket and keep it. Now we're on to Malia from Sam Broderson. This is representative of Malia, Nebraska, not too far away from the southwest outskirts of Omaha. And it's just a small, pretty simple setup, a short siding with a small transloading facility off on one side. I believe in the real world that industry is a pallet distributor. This takes us into Humboldt Corner. This is from Foster Brennan. I don't know for a fact if the trees on this module were intentionally damaged like this, or maybe if that damage just accumulated over many years of running around going to setups. But to me, it looks like a nice windstorm rolled through that module set, and I really do appreciate the detail there. Into Murdoch, this is a Y from Daryl Klatsky, taking the left-hand route. Right now, you may be hearing the locomotive horns sounding continuously. Well, that's also showing sometimes you run into some DCC control problems, and the DCC control actually cut out right in the middle of me blowing my horn for a crossing, so we were stuck just running forward at the continuous speed without any control. And that will finish up here at Bascule Bridge. This module is also really cool from Foster Brennan. It's a operating bascule bridge that lifts up and down with an electronic control. Really cool stuff, but also a little small for the camera that we had running around. You can see the camera getting bumped around there, and this is kind of the pathetic end of our run today because lost control of the locomotives, the camera's getting moved around. It's about time to cut our losses and call it quits for the day. And that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to ride around the layout with us, and I hope to see you all again soon.